With only hours left before his execution, his final request wasn't for a last meal or a phone call. It was to see his dog one last time. But what happened next froze everyone in disbelief. The prison felt heavier that morning, as if the walls themselves knew what was coming. Every sound, the clink of keys, the echo of boots on concrete, carried a weight that pressed down on everyone inside. In his cell, Daniel sat on the edge of his cot, his hands clasped loosely, eyes fixed on the floor. He wasn't the same man who had walked in years ago. Time and regret had carved lines into his face, softening the once sharp defiance in his eyes. The guards expected his last request to be the usual, a special meal, a call to family, maybe a final letter. But when the warden asked, Daniel's voice was low, steady. "I want to see Max, my dog." There was a pause. Some guards exchanged puzzled glances. A condemned man choosing a dog over people was unusual, almost unheard of. But for Daniel, Max had been more than a pet. He'd been family, the only living soul who had stood by him before the bars and the trial. With only hours left, he didn't want forgiveness or comfort from strangers. He just wanted to look into the eyes that had never once judged him. The warden leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, weighing the request. In all his years, he'd seen unusual last wishes, but bringing a dog into a maximum security prison, especially on execution day, wasn't one of them. In the control room, the staff debated. "It's a security risk," one officer argued. "We've never allowed an animal in here, especially for a condemned inmate." Another officer, older and quieter, spoke up. "Max is all he has left. No visitors, no letters, no calls. Maybe we should grant it." The warden asked for the file. It was true. Daniel's records showed a clean behavior history for years. No fights, no escape attempts, no disciplinary infractions. And in the personal history section, there was a note. Owned a German Shepherd named Max for 8 years before arrest. Reluctantly, the warden agreed. Under strict supervision. Yard only. 10 minutes. Word spread quickly through the prison. Some guards shook their heads. Others whispered about the strange bond between a man and his dog. For Daniel, those 10 minutes meant everything. Somewhere out there, Max was on his way, and neither man nor dog knew just how much this reunion would change. The prison yard was unusually still as the gates at the far end creaked open. Daniel stood a few feet from the chair they'd placed in the center, his wrists cuffed loosely in front of him, eyes fixed on the opening. Then he saw him. Max trotted in, his black and tan coat gleaming under the pale morning light. 2 officers walked on either side, holding the leash taut, but it was clear from the way Max's ears shot forward and tail began to wag that he recognized the man waiting for him. Daniel's breath caught. Years had passed, but nothing, not the gray in his fur or the muscle in his frame, could disguise the dog he'd raised from a pup. The officers hesitated for a moment, glancing toward the warden, who gave a short nod. The leash slackened, and Max surged forward, closing the distance in seconds. Daniel dropped to his knees just in time for Max to press his head against his chest, whining in a sound halfway between joy and heartbreak. For a moment, the prison walls faded. There was no countdown clock, no execution order, only a man and his dog, together again. Daniel buried his face in Max's fur, inhaling the familiar scent that brought back years of memories. Long walks, muddy paws, nights when the dog's steady breathing kept him from falling apart. But then, Max's body stiffened. His tail froze mid-wag, ears pivoting sharply. A deep, guttural growl rumbled from his chest. Daniel felt it before he heard it. Max wasn't looking at him anymore. His gaze had locked onto someone standing. A few feet away, a uniformed officer, tall and stiff, his hands clasped behind his back. The growl deepened, teeth flashing in a silent warning. The nearby guards shifted uneasily. "Hey, control your dog," one muttered, stepping forward, but Daniel instinctively placed a calming hand on Max's back. "Easy boy, it's okay." It wasn't okay. Max had never growled like this without a reason. The officer under Max's glare avoided eye contact, his jaw tight. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew his dog's instincts, and Max wasn't wrong often. For the first time that morning, Daniel's curiosity stirred. Something about this man was setting Max off. And in a place where every second counted, instincts, especially a dog's, could mean everything. Daniel kept one hand resting on Max, feeling the tension ripple through the dog's muscles. The officer in Max's sights shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking away. Daniel's mind began to rewind. Back to the night, everything fell apart. It had been raining hard that night. Daniel remembered the pounding on his door, Max's frantic barking, and the shadow of a man slipping out the back just before the police stormed in. They never caught that man. Instead, they found Daniel standing in the middle of the chaos, holding the wrong end of the story. Max had been there. He'd seen it all. Now, here he was, reacting to a man in uniform like he'd found that shadow. Again, Daniel's pulse quickened. Could this be the same person? The thought was dangerous, maybe impossible, but Max's instincts had saved him more than once before. The officer finally turned, muttering something about needing to check the perimeter, and walked away briskly. Max's eyes followed him until he disappeared from sight, his growl fading into a low whine. Daniel knew one thing for sure: this wasn't just a reunion anymore. Something was about to change. The uneasy mood in the yard didn't fade. Max sat close to Daniel, his body angled toward the gate where the officer had disappeared, ears pricked and alert. Another guard, Officer Ramirez, had noticed it too. He walked over, lowering his voice. "Your dog's got a good nose. What's his problem with Jenkins?" Daniel shrugged slightly, careful not to show too much interest. "Max doesn't growl at strangers for fun." Ramirez frowned. "Funny thing, Jenkins was on duty the night you got arrested. He never mentioned knowing you." The words hung heavy between them. Daniel kept his gaze on Max, but inside, his thoughts raced. If Jenkins had been there that night, why wasn't it in the reports? As if on cue, Jenkins reappeared at the far end of the yard. Max's growl returned instantly, sharp and unrelenting. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "That's not normal." The warden, watching from the tower, called down, "What's going on here?" No one answered right away. The tension was thick, the air charged with something unspoken. Daniel knew the truth was circling closer. And if Max was right, this yard wasn't just a place for goodbyes. It was about to become a battleground for the truth. Later that afternoon, the warden called Daniel into a small interview room. Max was allowed to stay by his side, still keeping a wary eye on the door. Officer Ramirez stood in the corner, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on Jenkins, who had been summoned as well. "Jenkins," the warden began, "why didn't you disclose that you were on site the night of Daniel's arrest?" Jenkins's jaw tightened. "Didn't think it mattered. I was off duty, just passing by." Max let out a sharp bark, the sound echoing in the small room. His eyes locked onto Jenkins, the growl deepening. Ramirez leaned forward. "Funny, because a witness just came forward saying they saw a man matching your description leaving the scene that night, before the cops arrived." The warden's expression darkened. "We're reopening the case. Effective immediately. The execution is delayed." Daniel felt the air rush back into his lungs. It wasn't freedom, not yet, but it was hope. Jenkins glared at him, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, the truth had a crack to slip through. And it all started with a dog who refused to forget. The investigation moved quickly. With the new witness statement and fresh evidence, it didn't take long for cracks to appear in the case against Daniel. Fingerprints that had never matched him were retested, this time against Jenkins. The results were damning. Weeks passed, each day bringing more revelations. Jenkins was arrested, charged with the very crime Daniel had been convicted of. The prosecutors dropped the charges against Daniel, and the prison gates that once symbolized the end of his life now swung open to set him free. Max was there, waiting just beyond the fence, tail wagging furiously. Daniel knelt, burying his face in the familiar fur, whispering, "We made it. Boy, we made it." Stepping outside, the air felt different, lighter, warmer, alive. Max trotted at his side. No leash, no guards, just the sound of their footsteps on open ground. The world hadn't changed much in those years, but Daniel had. He was no longer the man defined by his sentence. He was the man his dog had believed in all along. And now, thanks to that loyalty, he had a second chance to prove Max right. If you were moved by this incredible story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us for more heartwarming and unbelievable stories.